Originating from our flagship studios of KEST 1450 AM in San Francisco, syndicated and simulcast around the world on www.ifidknownthen.com, www.ifidknownthen.com. Life Insights Live, the radio show, has been recognized as the longest-running major market personal growth radio program in the nation. And so we have, in your honor, just for you, we have archived a gazillion episodes of the show under Radio Archives in our website, available to you absolutely for free. So there's a whole education in spiritual energy flow, energy concepts, awareness and consciousness, all there available to you absolutely free. You do have to register for the website, but we don't buy, steal, sell, or monetize that information in any way whatsoever. In fact, we don't even put you into our mailing list from there at this point. So we would ask you to put yourself into our mailing list separately from that. Yes, please do. Also, we would love it if you would go in and like Life Insights Subtext Educational up on Facebook. The reason I say that is there's two Life Insights. I think the other one is when I tried to create one, and I haven't figured out how to get rid of it yet. But Life Insights Subtext Educational up on Facebook. We'd love for you. Now, I know how brains work. We've just said ifidknownthen.com, ifidknownthen.com several times in a row, and your brain has said, something really familiar and something really easy. I'll be able to remember that. And when you go to type it, your brain's going to want to type, oh, man, it was something I knew I would be able to remember. And that's not going to get you to our website. It was something I knew I'd be able to remember. So we want to really spell it out to you because we want it to stick in your brain. We've created a brain stick-worthy, I think that just sounded wrong somehow. We've created a stick-in-your-brain mnemonic that will get you into the website, a totally fabulous shortcut that will actually get you into our website. All you have to do is type in these words.
NotScott.com.
Y'all get it, right? Because I'm Scout like Pathfinder. I am not Scott like Turf Builder. And every time I introduce myself to people, I kind of almost have to go through that. Yep. Cool. So, happy birthday, America. Yay. I hope you all found lovely and delightful ways to celebrate. I hope that you got outdoors and got sunshine. All of them things are good for you. I am not a physician. I'm not licensed to diagnose, prescribe, but I would recommend to everybody that you be doing a vitamin D3 supplementation. My recommendation would be up around 5,000 units a day, but at least 1,000 or 2,000 a day. Just a side recommendation. It supports your immune system. It supports all kinds of stuff. And I will tell you that one of the side effects of being depleted in vitamin D3, well, actually vitamin D2, but you can't buy that very well. Never mind. D3. You don't have to remember the number. One of the side effects or one of the symptoms of being deficient in D is that the whole world feels incredibly heavy on your shoulders. Boom. And that's just one of the symptoms of being deficient in D. So I recommend it, but that's a recommendation from just some guy on the radio. I'm not an MD. I'm not a physician. Oh, I'm going to go politically bad for a tenth of a second. I am not a genius expert in immune systems because I own a doc-in-the-box urgent care business. If you didn't get that, good. Just let it slide on by. If you did get that, oops, I'm sorry. Yikes. So, happy birthday, America. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies and all that good stuff. Happy perfect day to notice that it's a perfect day, to have a great day on purpose. Even more so. We talked a couple weeks ago. Last week we had a spiritual perspective show. That was fabulous. Loved that. And for all the people that attended our online event on the 2nd, thank you very much for being there. That was fabulously fun. I loved that a lot. And we'll be continuing to do those, sponsored through and produced by East West. My intent is that for all of the events sponsored by and produced by East West, my intent is even as we do get more and more people allowed into the event room, I now intend that we'll put those up online through Zoom all the way through the rest of the year, in fact, probably forever, now that I'm getting sort of used to seeing myself on camera and figuring out that other people think I look okay, even though, anyway, all that stuff. I don't necessarily think of me as pretty. But expressive, I am expressive. So there is that part. Perfect day to have a great day on purpose. We've been talking about our ability to choose awareness and consciousness. Even in the workshop, we were talking about our ability to notice and recognize our response to love. There's so much about being alive and being a spiritual being in a human body. There's so much about being incarnate in a human body. There's so much about the human experience that we've been sort of trained into believing everybody else is in charge of what we get to do, be, have, and experience. We get trained into believing that we experience love when somebody else loves us. We get trained into believing that we experience ourselves love-worthy when somebody else loves us. We get trained into believing, you're nobody till somebody loves you. We get trained into believing that, God, I'm in song lyrics all of a sudden, that people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. We get trained into believing that our external circumstances are the determining factor for our internal experience. We get trained into believing that our external experiences are the determining factor for our internal experience, even though numerous people that are highly respected, possibly even by you, have written, not me, from prison. Was in jail once, but I didn't do any writing while I was there. Yeah, all right. Sorry, shouldn't have brought that up. I was in jail for taking a study break at midnight and taking a walk in a residential neighborhood when I had long hair, when that wasn't a common thing to do. They came up with something else, but that was what I was in jail for, and just overnight. And a long grilling by the detectives who really wanted to just make it very clear to me that don't ever do that in one of our neighborhoods again, son. And it made it pretty clear to me I didn't. But anyway, yeah, so I was in jail, never been in prison, didn't do any writing while I was in jail. But there's been writing, well, and I confess I wasn't as conscious then. I spent most of my time in jail terrified. Oh, man, there's so many stories of that, none of which go here. Sorry about that. I just skip it. That's really the essence of the whole thing. You don't need any more information than that. Other than, among the many things I learned in jail, one was I didn't ever want to do that again. And so far I've been successful. Another 20, 25, 30 years of being successful at that, and I'll be good. I've totally gotten us off track, haven't I? Let's rejoin our radio show already in progress. Even though numerous times it's been written by people who are highly respected by many, possibly even by you, who were spending time in prison, that walls do not a prison make. And certainly Nelson Mandela did some fabulous work in prison that had nothing to do with deciding that he gave up because the prison was ugly and that was all he was going to get to experience was that ugly. And others who have been philosophers and have been in prison. Our culturation leads us to believe that our external circumstances are totally in charge of so much about us and about our internal circumstances. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about building enough consciousness to be able to have our feelings rather than having to be them. Being able to have those feelings rather than having to be them. Consciousness, awareness and consciousness, stepping into opening, finding that spiritual opening in ourselves. Well, we've been enculturated a lot to believe that our internal experience is dependent on our external experience, and that just makes sense. And I will grant you a beautiful sunny day with sunlight glittering through early morning dew on exquisitely blossomed flowers. It's much easier for me to remember my own light and my own state of love, which, by the way, some of you may remember you had a homework assignment, which was notice things of beauty, and then notice how you experience the beauty of them, where in you experience that, and how you experience that, what that sensation is. So those of you that have done your homework, congratulations, you get 36 points of extra credit. We get enculturated to believe that our internal experience is completely based on our external experience. And I do honestly grant you again, a beautiful sunny morning with sunlight glistening off the dew on the flowers is much easier to remember the bright light within ourselves when it is reflected in something we appreciate outside ourselves, unless you hate flowers and hate dew and hate sunlight. But at the same time, I can tell you that I was visiting friends in L.A. who grow some beautiful roses on a day when it was cloudy and lightly raining. One could choose to look at that and go, oh, it's raining. Or one could be me and look at that and go, oh, wow, this is perfect light, and run outside with my camera, or my cell phone, goes either way. I've done both, run outside with my camera or my cell phone and enough protection above them so that they don't get drowned, and be taking pictures of flowers with raindrops on them, in the fact that filtered light is an absolutely perfect time to take photos of colorful things like flowers, much more so than bright sunlight. And raindrops are beautiful on flowers, and I've got a set, if you go, you can find them in my Facebook photos under Scott Bartlett Facebook, of roses with rain on them, and got some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful photographs, some of which my sister-in-law has asked for as Christmas presents, printed. And that's easy. We're going to do that. We get enculturated to believe that external determines our internal state. Whereas, a lot of people might look at a day that clouded over and was raining as like depressive, where I'm crazy enough that it was exciting. What a fabulous opportunity that I'm here near those beautiful flowers, and it's clouded over, and it's raining, and I get diffuse light and raindrops. I admit I'm such a purist. I've never gone out and taken the spray bottle to put drops of water on the roses to stage those photos, and I probably will now that I've thought of it. Still won't get the diffuse light, though. The truth is, we have the choice of whether or not we're focusing on elevating, increasing, and having the flow of love, or the flow of our own light, or the flow of our own life force in us. We have the choice to be what we are by choice. And all the price of admission is consciousness. And the willingness to return again and again and again and again and again to the energy state that we choose to be, even when we get triggered to bump out of it. Speaking of bump out of it, Carlos, I get a point. I did a transition. Speaking of bump out of it, we're going to jump away to remind you where you're listening, also to give you our website information so that you can go in and find all that good stuff and know how to contact us. So while you remember that it's a perfect day to have a great day on purpose, stick around. I'll be right back. originating from the flagship studios of KEST 1450 AM in San Francisco, syndicated and simulcast around the world on www.ifidknownthen.com, www.ifidknownthen.com. Life Insights Live, the radio show, has been recognized as the longest-running major market personal growth radio program in the nation. Yay us. And so we have archived a gazillion episodes of the show up on our website under Radio Archives, Life Insights Live. And they are available to you absolutely for free, a huge education in spirituality, energy flow, healing, and consciousness. You do have to register for the website to get to them. That's all you have to do. However, we don't buy, steal, sell, rent, or give away or monetize that information. By the way, for those of you that had a challenge, we've created a new player now so that the shows will play on your iPhone. It's still easier if you download them into something else, upload them into iTunes, and then put them onto your iPhone, because if you just run them on the player on your iPhone, you'll have to just keep touching the screen to keep screen lit up. Otherwise, it shuts off the program anyway. God bless Apple and everybody that works there. All the managers that make these decisions. Anyway, so that's all there. So we'd love to have you do that. Go and register for the website. We'd also love to have you sign up for the mailing list. That's a separate action. Please do that, because then we can keep in touch. And go in and find Life Insights, Subtext Educational, up on Facebook, and like us on Facebook if you would, please. We'd appreciate that. And then we can keep in touch. Now, I know how things work. You just heard me say our website a gazillion times, and you thought, that's easy. I'll remember that. IfI'dKnownThen.com, that's so easy. IfI'dKnownThen.com, that's kind of familiar. I'll be able to remember that, and then you won't. So here's something you will remember. You can get into our website if you just Carlos it up by
typing in notscott.com.
Notscott.com. God, I wonder if we can buy Carlos's shortcut as a URL.
That'd be sweet.
That would be very cute. When we get done, I'll have to go check that out. That would be hysterical. Even just carlossays.com. That would be fabulously fun. Anyway, because people can spell your name, they get my name wrong. So not Scott, because I'm Scout like Pathfinder. I'm not Scott like Turf Builder. Y'all get it, right? Anyway, notscott.com will take you directly in there, and we'd love to have you. Well, we'd love to have you go directly in there, access the radio shows, put yourself on the mailing list, like us, like Life Insights, Subtext Educational up on Facebook. Love is a word that we have in our language, and I frequently think that our language is bereft. In that same way that I have heard, I have not fact-checked this, but I have heard that the native northern Alaskan natives have multiple words for snow, that in a word it describes the snow with a texture, whether it's light and flaky or small and gritty or icy or whatever. I certainly have had Hawaiians tell me that they have multiple words for lava, that in the Hawaiian language there are multiple words for lava that describe the lava, unlike English just has one word, lava. We don't even have a word for active, hot, flowing lava versus a word for already dried lava field. It's just lava. Yeah, short on words. And I noticed that we're short on words for love. We need more. But in the meantime, let me work from this direction. Love is the word that labels a sensation that we have. The sensation that we have is the sensation of our energy or our aliveness flowing. The sensation that we have is the sensation of our energy or our aliveness flowing. And we are who has the option about how much of our aliveness we let flow. Y'all know that. You've had points in time where you've been with people that you know that you love, but right at that moment you're having You've had moments where you've been with someone that you know that you love, but right in that moment you're having an experience of being an emotion rather than having an emotion, and you're maybe being in the emotion of annoyed or angry at them, and you notice that you can squelch off your love of them, and if they try to apologize and get you back into a state of loving them, all right, maybe not all of us. I've had the experience of when I'm mad at my beloved and they're doing things that are way lovable and trying to re-trigger me into a state of back into loving them again, I resist, and I can feel me clenching down. I can remember as a kid that if I was mad, my mom had this little teasy phrase she would sing. I'm not going to do it to you because I don't want it to stick in your head. But my mom had this little teasy phrase that she would sing to me because she knew that if she kept doing it, it would make me giggle. But I remember the first thing it would do is make me clench down harder because I was not going to let go of my mad yet. Was not ready to let go of my being mad yet. And I would clench down harder on my mad before the very thing that was going to make me giggle and feel better again before it could kick in and work. And then it would kick in and I'd giggle and I'd be mad that it had broken my mad and I'd try to go back to my mad. All of which is a conscious, willful choice of clenching down on one's own life force to not allow one's own life force to be flowing vividly and alive because one has not yet forgiven one's person, one's surrounding, one's world, one's life. Yet, not yet forgiven. I said that already. So I just said not yet forgiven yet. But not yet forgiven yet. One's circumstance, one's life, or even one's redundant sentence. I hate to admit it, but early on in doing radio work, I probably would have clenched down and been anxious and clenched over having just made what I think is a word bobble, and I would have stayed clenched and nervous trying to make sure I did the rest of the show right and accurately and well. Yeah, like that helped. There's a reason that they don't call awakening into consciousness enheavingment. Wow, I have reached the state of enheavingment. Life is heavy, everything's heavy, it all sucks, you'll see. You, student, shall discover the state of enheavingment once you realize that everything is ucky. Right? Yep, nope. They call it enlightenment, both because it is flowing more light through us, but also because it is a much lighter state. Enlightenment. I will tell you that moving toward that elevated state of consciousness and awareness does make us more aware of our feelings, which in some cases allows us to have our feelings rather than be them, and that opens the door to be able to navigate around the triggers of those feelings. To even tell people gently that, I think you're trying to do this, I think you're trying to be charming, but what you're really doing is making me really uncomfortable. So could we do this another way? Or to even be able to recognize and say, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, to go into a state of anger around people that you care about or love, and to build the freedom to just go, wow, am I triggered? That just punched my buttons. Don't even know why, or I do know why, and this is what about it that I went off on. And sometimes that allows us to find out that what we heard wasn't actually even physically what they said, or that what we heard was not what the words they used were intended to communicate. Or sometimes we get to find out that, they had their buttons pushed before we got our buttons pushed, and they were button pushing back in return. You hurt me, so I'm hurting you back. All that fun stuff that comes with genuine communication. But we get enculturated to believe that our state of being, our presentness, our state of experiencing life is way dependent on external circumstances. If it's an ugly day, I should feel cruddy. If it's a beautiful day, I'm allowed to feel beautiful. If I'm feeling that I'm isolated and nobody loves me, I should be allowed to be whiny and want to go eat worms. Sorry, I have no idea where that came from. Nobody loves me, everybody hates me, I'm going to go eat worms. I don't even know where that came from, but it was well known in my childhood. And maybe not yours, in which case, yeah, sorry. You should have grown up in Kansas last century. It turns out that we are able to be at choice of our own internal state and our own internal monologue. And from being at choice about our internal monologue, and I'm not talking about going all airheaded and blithely ignoring your surroundings. It's being what you are, being what you choose to be. It's choosing your state of being in the midst of your surroundings while acknowledging your surroundings. It's funny, we teach after we teach the live beam meditation practice. I frequently point out that it's a wonderful meditation to substitute for whatever you used to do while you were waiting. It's a wonderful state of being to substitute for whatever you used to do while you were waiting. It's a funny story. I was actually out in a store the other day, and I had timed it badly so that I had some level of urgency about getting home to be on time for an appointment. And the store had taken me slightly longer than I expected, and when I got up to the checkout place, I typically check out with a person at that store, but they also have a self-check, and the lines for person checkout were longer, and the line for self-check were shorter, so that's where I went. And when I got up to the self-check thingy, I could not get it to operate. I couldn't get it to work. And so I looked at the three people who had formed the line behind me and said, "It's broken," and, grabbed my cart and headed for another line that was self-checkout. I was in a Costco place, which was now going to be longer. And then one of the people who'd been in line behind me managed to flag down an employee and point at the self-check thing that I'd tried to use and tell them that it was not working. Could they fix it so we could use it, because there were lines? And this was the sweetest part, because I was pressured, and I allowed myself to get somewhat grumpy, and then I was busy getting myself back into my center, even though my time was very pressed because of this breakdown. I was going to just make it, and then the thing broke. And the employee person came zipping over, and the person that had flagged down the employee flagged me back over and said she's going to try and fix it. It was just so cute. And the employee person was able to fix it, and when she brought it up, my check-in information was already there, so it was me. And everybody that had been in line behind me stood back, and somebody else grabbed my cart where I'd left it in the other line and swung it over to where I could reach it and gave it to me while the check-in, and it was like everybody fell in place to be of assist and make my world flow, which was way different than the grumpy I had started in, but certainly matched up to the ability by the time I was back in my center and able to openly express my wide-open heart and love for these people that were assisting me. My choice. I just mentioned the live beam meditation, so I want to come back to it, and then we'll finish that story. But I want to teach it to you. We're going to teach it in about 2 minutes and 45 seconds. If you're driving a vehicle, when I invite you to close your eyes, don't. You can just do it in the back of your mind. Our public service announcement: if you're riding a bicycle, you belong on the same side of the street with the flow of traffic. Pedestrians walk facing traffic, bicycles ride with traffic, and bicycles belong on the street and should at least acknowledge the traffic indicators. Even if you're going to break them, at least pay attention to them and give right away, but be on the street. Other than that, if you're home, if you're in bed listening to us on the clock radio, lucky you. Yeah, no kidding. Or, if you're doing your morning routine, you can just join right in when we do it. And we will point out, Carlos is going to give you a quick psychological insight to yourself. If your own mind says you can't possibly take a 2-minute and 45-second meditation break in the middle of your morning routine,
well, you might be wound up a little bit too tight.
You just might be.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
One free psychological insult. Oops.
Oops.
One free psychological insight, courtesy of Carlos.
Uh-oh.
Maybe that's the URL we need, courtesy of Carlos. Cool. So all the rest of those, light somewhere. Set yourself down. Just let your eyes go closed. And just draw in a long, deep breath till your lungs are full, and let that air flow out again. And as you're ready for another breath, let it be a long, deep breath, and this time allow that air to flow out through your body, as if your body were layers of silk or fabric. And with each breath, just let the air flow in, and let it flow out through your body, feeling your body open and expand. And in your imagination, I'd like you to imagine reaching a hand down to the center of this planet Earth and stirring that warm, rich, dense energy there at the center of the planet. Curl that imaginary hand into a cup and use that cupped hand now to draw a streamer of Earth energy right up through the planet, directly underneath you, up and into your body, just in front of your tailbone, and connect it there into that energy center, your first chakra. And just allow yourself to feel that connected warmth, the same warmth in the center of the planet, the same warmth there at your tailbone. And now, focusing where you're connecting that beam, I want you to stretch that same beam of energy that you've drawn up from the center of the earth. Draw it up deep inside your body, just in front of your spine. Draw that streamer of earth energy right up through your abdomen, through your chest, through your neck, through your head, on up out the top of your head, and all the way up and into what I'll call source. And focus on that stream of energy. In fact, using your will it for you to have more energy flowing up that beam. Richer, denser, faster, brighter, speed it up, whatever fits for you. More energy, will it so, to have more energy flowing from the center of the earth right up through you, up and geysering or fountaining into a big energy cloud above you that we'll just call source. Richer, denser, faster, brighter. And as you speed up that energy, you may notice a sense of compression or pressure inside of you. Just relax against that pressure and allow that energy beam through the middle of you to create a glow, and let that glow right on out through you and right out through everyone and everything around you. Floors, chairs, walls, ceilings, people, baby ducks, baby rhinos, scout redeeming newspaper-worthy lotto winnings, whatever it is that's in your reality. Just let that glow right out through you and right out through everyone and everything around you. Willing more energy flowing up, increasing that energy flowing up through that beam, geysering into source, and allow that glow to glow right out through everything and everyone around you. Those of you who can, stay with that meditation all the way through to the end of the program. Just come back every time you get distracted, bring it back, reinstate. Those of you that have to get back into your morning routine, now would be the time to give your body a big breath. As you let it out, just let it bring your eyes back open and bring you right on back into the room. Welcome back.
This is Liz. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for helping and healing my family for 20-plus years. The Life Insight classes, especially the Healing Series, it led me to profound healing and growth. Private sessions for those times in my life when I need guidance and healing on all levels, and the techniques that you have taught me over the years that I use daily in my meditations. You are truly a blessing.
Sweet. Thank you, Liz. And we'd love to have your tribute, your endorsement for everybody else to know. If you've gotten things from the radio show, from working with me individually as a client, from the classes taught by me or the other Life Insights certified teachers, we'd love to have that we could put it up. You can either get our phone number from the website and put it in on a voicemail, or you're equally welcome to just record it on your iPhone or on your phone, whatever phone, sorry. Just record it on your phone, and you can send it to us in an email. Our email address and our phone number all in the website, and the shortcut to the website, courtesy of Carlos, is just notscott.com. I suggest that you build a practice of coming back into that live beam state every time you would otherwise be waiting. But we're going to add another notch to that, because I would suggest that you come into that live beam state every time you notice something strikes you as beautiful. What the heck, why not? Come back into that live beam state every time you notice that something strikes you as beautiful. But even more so, come back into that live beam state every time you recognize that something has punched your buttons and knocked you out of center. Just snap it back in place. You don't have to do the whole exercise every time. Every time that you've got, 30 seconds or a minute, do that whole exercise of letting yourself draw that beam up from the planet, right up through your body, deep inside, in front of your spine, out top of your head, up into source, speed it up so you glow. But you can also just snap that state back in place every time you can think of it, particularly when you notice something has punched your buttons and knocked you out of center. You can just snap that beam right back in place and light you back up so that you glow. Build that in as a practice. Love is the word for the sensation we experience when our energy or our aliveness is flowing. And when you study that a bit, you begin to notice that while we think that, other people being cooperative so that we can feel a state of love versus other people being pushing our buttons so that we don't feel our state of love, we really get enculturated to believe that them all of the thems out there, are in charge of our internal landscape. When the truth is, we're in charge of our internal landscape if we choose to be, or our subconscious pre-programming is in charge of our internal landscape if we don't take charge of it. Now, I will grant that, and I can't attribute the quote, but I know there's a quote out there that I just love, which says, while I recognize and know that an unexamined life is a waste, couldn't I just have an unexamined lunch? I am not suggesting that what we do as we move into consciousness is analyze every flipping thing going on in our world and analyze our every flipping response. It's way easier to simply allow our responses to flow through us while choosing to come back to our center and have our aliveness flowing in us. That was important. It's way easier to, rather than having a target of trying to analyze our every single action to decide whether or not it was conscious or right or an old program and where it came from and whose fault it was, let's all blame Mom. It's way easier to have a target to move toward, which is, every time we can think of it, bringing ourselves back into a state of flow, so that we can have our emotions and let them flow through us, while at the same time being our own choice of energy state, allowing our energy to flow to light us up, being in a state of love. Being in a state of love is the word for the sensation we experience when our energy and our aliveness is flowing in us. We get enculturated and trained to believe that other people are in charge of whether or not we have our aliveness and our energy flowing in us. But, truthfully, if you've ever had somebody that you really would rather stay away because for whatever reason their stuff was sticky, and yet they were loving you, you didn't notice that made your energy and your aliveness flow in you. Because you had choice and it wasn't doing that for you. We have choice over whether or not we have our energy and our aliveness flowing in us. Regardless of our surroundings, four walls do not a prison make is ever so true. Ever so true. A cloudy day does not a depressed state make. It might allow for it, it might trigger, unless you happen to love cloudy days. And I agree 100% that sometimes it's easier to remember our state of aliveness, our state of love, our state of beauty, our state of life force flowing in us. Sometimes it's easier to remember when the external triggers match up to that state of being for us, so we get reminded. It's certainly easier to remember my own love in and of myself when somebody else is loving me. Yep, granted that. But, it's also easier to remember the answers on my history test if I'm allowed to use my notes. Yeah, so I remember I had one professor that any time he said that an exam was going to be open book, everybody just groaned, because since it was open book, he expected 10 times more out of us than he would have if it was closed book. Yeah, didn't help. Off topic. We're at choice of having our own aliveness flowing. We're at choice of not having our own aliveness flowing. We're at choice of having our feelings while being our consciousness. We're equally at choice of not having any consciousness and having to be whatever dramatics our feelings trigger us into, and then later wondering what was that about. If you've ever had one of those fights, arguments, disputes, disagreements. Getting to later wonder what it was about. And I will tell you that right now, with this backdrop of how we interact with everyone else differently, and how we watch out for our health and well-beings, but also how we shape our behaviors to be supporting and caring about the health and well-being of the grandparents of the person I'm talking to. Thinking a little further than my own center. This whole moment in time, not just because of the externals, but also because of the energy flow we're in, is bringing our emotions right out to the surface of us. It's also bringing people's shadow side out to the surface of us. We're also noticing that there's an extreme polarization going on, with each side of the polarization accusing the other side of creating and enforcing the polarization toward their own political advantage. Yeah, well, fine. Which makes it really easy to go into the polarization and the upset and the distress and the confusion and the anger and all of those other things that we might come back to. There's a phrase I use a lot about when I'm talking on the topic of healing, is that I always point out that healing should not be reserved for disease. That healing truthfully is, healing from the outside of us truthfully is something outside of us bringing more energy flow into us than we were able to generate at that time on our own, or free up or allow or make flow. I also frequently point out that, sometimes I point out to my clients that there are clients that only call me up when they're already in a state of smushed. Whatever it is in their world has them smushed, and we get them unsmushed. I mean, that's my job. One of the fun parts about my work is that the guidance that coordinates with me, from the time people book an appointment with me, the guidance that works with me starts flowing healing into their energy. Clients get worked on from the time they book the appointment. Oh, that's clever. Anyway, particularly if they've got a particular topic, I was going to say, book an appointment a year out and take advantage of that. So that frequently by the time the client's on the phone with me, they sort of remember the urgency of why they booked, and then we go fix the underlay of that because they're not in the midst of the trauma. But I like to point out to people that booking time with me to recharge, reopen their energy flow when they're not in a state of smudged is phenomenally useful. Let's elevate your norm to a higher norm. And again, I always want to remind people, I'm a tool and a shortcut. Nobody has to have a teacher. Nobody has to have a book. Nobody has to have a healer. We're just shortcuts to support it when that is not opening, obviously, to you. But the key element being, we get so enculturated into believing that our internal energy state is determined by external influences that we lose track of the fact that we ourselves can be at choice about the energy state we're living in. Speaking of that choice, we want to give you the choices of being able to know what radio station you're listening to and how to find more information about us on the web. So while you're noticing it's a perfect day to have a great day on purpose, stick around. I'll be right back. It's originating through the studios of KEST 1450 AM in San Francisco, syndicated and simulcast around the world on www.ifidknownthen.com. Ifidknownthen.com. Ifidknownthen.com. Life Insights Live, the radio program, has been recognized as the longest-running major market personal growth radio program in the nation. We think it's in the world, but we haven't been able to validate that, so we're not claiming it yet. But longest-running. And so, in your honor, we have archived, not all of them, but a gazillion episodes of the Life Insights Live teachings, consciousness, spirituality, healing, energy flow, whatever. All there available to you in the website under Radio Archives. All for free, absolutely no cost. You do have to register for the website to be able to get in, but we don't buy, steal, sell, or monetize your information in any ways whatsoever. In fact, we ask you to register for our mailing list separately. And we'd also appreciate it if you would go into Facebook and like Life Insights, Subtext Educational, up on Facebook as well, because then we can keep in touch and let you know when we're doing stuff and where you can have bigger scoops of the wonderfulness that is the Life Insights teachings. I know that we've said the website, ifidknownthen.com, about a half a dozen times already, and your mind thought, that's familiar, that's easy, I'll remember it, and when you go to type it in, you won't. So here's how it works. We're going to run this and flow this so deeply into your subconscious that you will have absolutely zero problem being able to draw it back into consciousness and type it in. In fact, you'll repeat it to every friend you ever meet, telling them they should check out that website, all by telling them the shortcut to go into the website is simply
notscott.com.
I dare you to forget Carlos's voice telling you
notscott.com.
See, it's stuck in there. You can't help but remember
notscott.com.
We're like a movie theater pumping popcorn smell through the theater. Yeah, notscott.com, because I am indeed Scout like Pathfinder. I am not Scott like Turf Builder or whatever other Scott. Very funny. I have a client was just having trouble keeping their words straight because it turns out that a professional that they're working with is Scott Bartlett. And so they're all wound out. They can't quite keep their brain straightened out. And I've not met him, and I don't know him, and I don't know. We get, announcements. Anything I need to announce? Happy birthday, America. I think that's what I needed to announce. We get all trained into thinking that the external influences are in charge of what and how we get to experience our life. We get all enculturated and trained into thinking the external experiences are in charge of what we get to experience internally in our life. You're nobody till somebody loves you. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. There were bells, but I never heard them till there was you. When the truth is, we get to choose our own energetic state and aliveness. Any of y'all that have experienced His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which, by the way, is his rank, not his name, any of y'all that have experienced His Holiness the Dalai Lama, even in the recordings or even in his writings, you can observe that his state of consciousness and his state of alertness and his ability to laugh, as are the team around him, is still there even after political events have thrown him into exile and he can't go home. And they've thrown him into exile, and that now opened the door where this is a very different life than the lives he's had before, because now he's out and about and traveling. I doubt I ever would have gotten myself to the top of the mountain and through the security to get to talk to him when he was on the mountain in Tibet. And yet, I was able to, thank you, and if you ever get at tickets and buy an extra, I'll buy it from you, thank you. A friend got tickets and was able to let me have one, where I got to experience him at Shoreline. I didn't have to go to Tibet and climb a mountain. And it was an exquisite experience. It's memorable. Near the top of the list of memorable experiences in my life. And yet, even though he's exiled and can't go home, and his life is very different than he expected for the first many years of it, there's still a brightness, a joy, a beauty. His insights and his view of life are still elevated and enlightened, even though his circumstances would give him a perfectly good reason to decide that if circumstances were to determine his feelings should be betrayed and grumpy and sad and unhappy and maybe even dead. I prefer being on a planet where he's alive. Deep preference of mine. Which is, anyway, interesting for a kid growing up in a Protestant church in Kansas and not really having an awareness of what a Dalai Lama was. We get the thought that our external circumstances determine our internal state of being. We live in a state where we get trained that our external circumstances determine how we're allowed to be internally, and then we are stunned and surprised by people who are living way more joyfully lit up than what we think their external circumstances would have led them to be. There's a wonderful story I read about Bruce Willis in a not very important play in a not very important theater, and yet doing it so lit up that the people developing the plot for Moonlighting, which was supposed to relaunch Sybil Shepherd into a television level of fame, spotted Bruce Willis, and he was so lit up already that they said, ooh, we'd better grab that ball of light and put it into our productions so that, he's going to be a star. He might as well be a star in our show. And it turned out they were right. Bruce was being lit up beyond what the theater he was in or the play he was in would have substantiated or given him or built for him. And it played out well. But the truth was that was his option and his choice, and he took it. You've met people that stay lit up beyond their circumstances. Now, there's the annoying people that try to insist that you have to match them. That's not what I'm talking about. It only takes 7 muscles to smile. Yeah, no, to smile, I don't need that. Be light in front of me, because your light in front of me reminds me. I'll quote from Marianne Williamson, the poem that's got entitled Our Deepest Fear. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine. And then she goes on to say, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. Marianne Williamson, attributed to Nelson Mandela. We get to choose whether or not we're going to be in a state of beauty, joy, love, delight. And we can choose it not by ignoring or suppressing the feelings we're having, but by choosing to be in that state, fascinated by the feelings we're having. All y'all that have followed this show, or if you go download a gazillion episodes, by the way, the player now works on iPhone, but if you want a gazillion of them, you're still going to have to download them, import them into iTunes, and then you can put them on your phone, iPhone. Android phones, you can just download them. They're just MP3 files. Android phones thinks that's fine. Apple still wants us to use their file structure. If you've listened to the show over time, you've gotten to hear me sad, hurt, embarrassed, because I embarrass myself on the show a lot. And yet, still coming back to my center, having those feelings, coming back to my center, and expressing from the center of the light inside of me, even when I am a person having those feelings, even if I'm talking about those feelings. There have been periods where we've taught about grief, and I've had to be in the feeling state of grief to teach about it, and yet coming back to my own center. You get to choose. So I'm going to ask you a favor. One, treat yourself as a loved one, because you truly are. Regularly notice that no matter where on earth you are, it's a perfect day to have a great day on purpose. Scott Bartlett telling you, I love you. Let that carry you.